Hey everybody, it's Carpo here. Hope everybody's doing well, and I hope this is in focus, and I hope that the sound isn't too bad because I'm using a vintage lens on my Lumix camera, and it's a Rocore X 45mm lens, so it's kind of focused far away. I wanted to talk a little bit about something that I find very important. I'd start off by, this is how I'm going to, I guess, start it off by saying, if you were a Christian, I'm assuming a lot of you might be Christian. Not because you're my viewers, but because statistically 70 to 75% of the U.S. identifies as a Christian or in some form of Christianity. If you were a Christian and you found out that your favorite musician was a Jew, let's say, or a Muslim, would you hate that person merely for them being a different religion? Often, most people will still listen to the same music. What comes to mind when I say that is the old Yusef, Cat Stevens. Back in the 70s, he was very popular, and into the 80s, and he moved, I think in the 80s, to the Middle East, and he renounced citizenship, or something happened where he became a Muslim, and a lot of people started saying, oh, you know, they were opposed to that, you know, and so they didn't listen to him anymore, and it wasn't a very big deal because most people didn't give a shit. Music transcends all those boundaries. Let's say you are a Jew, and you have a painting on your wall, or you're Jewish. I'm not saying that offensively, so don't be sensitive. You have a painting on your wall and you find out that it was painted by a Muslim. Are you going to throw that painting out? Probably not. If you like the painting, you like the painting. If you're a person with a rational mind, you're not going to care what religion the person was that made that. Although religion inspires a lot of music and a lot of art, it doesn't mean that a person can't respect art and music from another religion. Now, I say this because these are three ways that we express ourselves: art, music, and religion. And they are three ways we relate to one another. And they are three kind of divine forms of expression, if you will. And they are expressions of our human experience. And what I guess what the bridge I'm trying to cross, or I should say the bridge I'm trying to gap, the gap I'm trying to bridge, is rather this idea that religion has to be opposed to one another. The interesting thing about religions is that the gods in these religions represent the human ideals. In other words, we find these morals and values and commandments within what we feel in our hearts is natural and proper and right. And art and music, on the other hand, they really transcend those boundaries, and they are easier to read. You may not be able to understand a religion if you're from a different culture, but you can always look at an art piece and say, whoa, that's beautiful. And you can also listen to music and decide for yourself whether or not that music fits in these scales that you appreciate. And that's a whole different story altogether, how different musical scales within Japan, India, the Americas, how different cultures use different notes to express their emotions, their feelings, and different paint colors as paint became more available. Now art, when I say art, I don't mean just paint, but paint became very popular once the pigments were more available and widely available. Back in the day, if you wanted to get purple pigment, it was nearly impossible. So you had to know people. You couldn't just go out and paint pictures as, buy $20 worth of paints and paint pictures. It didn't work that way. And so, but music was just as complicated if you didn't have an instrument, but everyone can sing. Anyone can make beats, and that's why bongos and drums became so popular. Beats are much easier to make than, string instruments or wood instruments, but flutes have been found in caves, I think 150,000 years old, if I'm not mistaken. Flutes and wood instruments and probably a whole variety of things we don't even know about yet have been used historically by ancient man, because music is in the heart, it's in the soul. Groove is in the heart, right? As D-Light says. So, as I said, art and music are easier to read for everyone than, say, religious dogma or a specific belief system, where a person may be like, what do you mean I can't eat pork? Or another person may say, oh, well, what do you mean God said this or God said that? And art and music, and this is where it gets kind of interesting, and this is where I think that they are superior to religion. Art and music change over time. As new ideas form, new stories surface, new lyrics come to be. And as new instruments are formed, and as electricity, created, say, electronic instruments, a whole new line of music opened up. And that's interesting when you consider that art and music change over time to suit humans' needs, but religion does not. Almost all religion stagnates. It holds itself firm to what it wants to be true, to what it believes to be true, because it's desperately clinging to old beliefs. Yet some sects of religion, whether it be Christianity or Islam or Judaism or New Age beliefs, they're kind of trying to break away from that. But the fact is that most traditional religion holds firm to its roots and refuses to budge with the times, and that makes it kind of a turnoff to a lot of people, just put it that way. And also, that doesn't represent reality. In other words, reality, everything we see around us in the universe is in motion, right? Everything is in flux, in movement, in creation and in decay. It's constant movement. So this is where interjecting this idea of complete stagnation of belief and a eternal heaven or an eternal hell just kind of fall by the wayside. And it's not about, it's about not believing it because it makes no sense, because it doesn't coincide with anything any rational human could come up with. And I don't believe what other man has written before me, so therefore I don't believe in man-written religions. And I'm not going to get into that debate, but if anything, there's an association and an emotional association that goes with extreme experiences. So many people who've had a psychedelic experience know this, especially if you've listened to certain music. Let's say you go to a concert in a psychedelic state. You may build an attraction or a love for that music, rather. And that's because of oxytocin, serotonin, the way that our brains process the experience, and we can become attached to a certain song or a certain person or a certain idea. And this is the same with religion. So you go to a concert, you can feel this way. You see a certain art piece, you can feel this way. And you can feel the same thing going to church or having an amazing experience with a whole bunch of people in one place. And really that's what humanities are after. And this is why I love philosophy. It's about applying all aspects of observation about human nature and humanity, understanding why people do the things they do. Not because we want to believe something, but because we can feel it. We really know it. And that's where I think music and art just speak to us in a different way. But it's interesting because humans and animals in religion and in art and in music are, especially in art, they take on a different form. In religion, the animals have always taken on a subservient or a lower rung in the ladder of life. Whereas in my belief, animals hold an equal rung in life, if that makes sense. But there's a word called, it's an iconoclasm, and it's this hatred for religious art or anything that represents religion. And this can be extended into art, it can be extended into music. And some people absolutely hate anything that represents that. That can even be a cross that you wear on your neck or a picture of Jesus on your wall, whatever it might be. But one of the most interesting aspects of religion itself is this fear of dancing and this fear of music. A lot of religious cultures don't respect music in the same way. They don't allow you to listen to rock, let's say the whole rock and roll fear of the 50s and 60s, the devil's music. I grew up in the 80s and I loved Slayer. Listened to heavy metal all through the 80s. And I remember my parents telling me once, well, you can't even hear what they're saying. They're just mumbling. They're not even saying anything. But once I got into it, oh yeah, I read the lyrics on the insert, and goddamn, Slayer's lyrics were much more complicated than any of the pop rock that was out there. And I thought, wow, they're speaking to my, to an understanding. Then I got, Metallica, Megadeth, speaking about nuclear war and corruption, and you start to understand that music says more about the world around us and our understanding of it than any religious aspect has to me. Music has told me more stories than any Bible could or any book could. And this is what, I'm not the only one to know this. The churches have been using music now for the past 20 years. Bands like, my friend was, Petra was one of them, and Stryper, the heavy metal Christian rock band. These are all, trying to bring people into Christianity and into these religions. But there's also this whole angle, this whole aspect of religion that hates the dancing part, that hates the music part, the rock and roll part. It's a cognitive dissonance, right? It's interesting. But I guess my message here is to celebrate art and celebrate music as the universal languages, regardless of what we think we know. Music follows really interesting patterns. If you look into music theory even slightly, it's pretty interesting stuff. Music follows very similar patterns to these, scales like of sevens, and it's fascinating the way music relates to the fractal nature of life, I guess. I'm kind of at a loss for words, because there's just so much I've looked into in this aspect of why music is such a mystery. Why does it sound good? Well, I don't have a mystery of why did humans create music, because, of course, we listen to the birds around us. The birds have been singing. Other animals have been making constant sounds. There's the constant thrumming and beats of a raindrop. We pick up on these things and we think, ooh, that sounds interesting, and go from there. But it's a fascinating life. It's a weird time to be alive right now, because we have so much more access to music and to so many art forms. We can go on the line and look at all the past art as well. It was something that was reserved for the the few in the past, and now we have constant access to it. And so this is why music kind of is my religion, if you will. Music and art really are my belief system. It's not about beliefs, it's about understanding. And through expression, we gain understanding. So if you find a way to express yourself, feel free to do it. That's what life's all about. Be well. Peace.